So let's kick this off. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us today for our second webinar in our 2020 series, Building and Leveraging Employee Resource Groups. So again, hello from me, Jill Peterson. Just wanted to kick off with some notes from our executive committee. And first and foremost, thank you all for joining us today. And we do hope that our existing members and any employees from those businesses, plus any prospective members or folks from the community who are interested in this topic, were able to join today. We do want this program and all of our programming to be spread around the community, whether you're a member or not. But of course, thank you to all of our members who are joining us today. This has definitely been an extraordinary year, and we have been trying some new things, obviously webinars rather than in-person events, and we will be continuing to keep our programming virtual throughout the remainder of the year. We definitely look forward to getting together and drinking coffee and chatting at some point in the future, but for now, again, thanks to everyone for joining us on this webinar. We're really looking for different topics that hit our membership where it matters right now, what's relevant in our community and to our local business leaders. And of course, like I say, keeping things flexible and having some agile programming this year has been key. But please, if there's any ideas you have, if you would like to speak to a certain topic, please let us know. And I would also like to put a call out. We are actively recruiting any new members who are interested in joining one of our committees. So our three committees are marketing and membership and education and engagement. That education and engagement committee is running this programming and arranging speakers and topics for the rest of the year. So again, if you would like to be part of planning our next event, or if you would like to sign on as a member of that committee moving forward, please let us know. We're really looking to grow our committees and membership, and if you're not quite sure where you might fit in there, even being an at-large member on our exec team would be wonderful. So please reach out to any of us, and I think we might have some notes on the technology coming up on our next slide here. But that will also include an email address you can reach out to us at. You can see this, bvn@uwdc.org, for technology assistance or anything else that you would like to see from the Business Volunteer Network. You can reach us there. Just some other quick notes on the tech here. So we will be using that chat to take any questions. So please feel free to chat in throughout the program. You're free to turn your camera on or off, whatever you're comfortable with, work from home sweats or otherwise. And your microphone is muted during the presentation for limiting background noise. But again, if you would like to speak up, you can either chat us or unmute later. We will be recording this presentation and sharing it afterwards online as well. So again, please feel free to share that. Spread the call for any new members to BVN. And again, if you'd like to get more engaged, please just let us know. So I think that covers most of our tech notes here. And with that, it is my pleasure to introduce Steve Whitman, who is, oh, sorry, there we are again with we went through our business meeting, and our topic again, we're covering employee resource groups. I'm extremely excited to talk about this. I think they've done so much for us at Zendesk to build and grow our culture, even virtually this year. So excited to introduce our panelists. But with that, again, I will let Steve kick us off and introduce our panelists. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Jill, and welcome again to everyone, all the members and guests who could join us today, and panelists and speakers as well. Thank you so very much. As you know today, building and leveraging our employee resource groups is our topic. Employee resource groups, or ERGs, as you'll hear us refer to them today, can play a big role in business culture, volunteer work, and charitable efforts. Whether you're new to ERGs or have a long history, today you'll learn how local companies leverage employees with diverse backgrounds and interests to advance initiatives. From changing recycling practices to shaping inclusive human resource practices, ERGs can make an impact. And just wait to see what happens when these employees step outside the company walls to get active in their communities. With that, I would like to welcome our three panelists today and give a brief introduction. First, we have Adam Erdmann. He's the Senior Program Manager with the Alliant Energy Foundation. Adam works with nonprofit and community organizations on behalf of Alliant Energy. This includes grant making, corporate sponsorships, and volunteer activities in the community the company serves throughout Wisconsin and Iowa. Prior to arriving at Alliant Energy, Adam spent 12 years working in the nonprofit sector. He earned his master's degree in nonprofit management and philanthropy, and has worked in nonprofit agencies managing fundraising, membership, and volunteer programs. At Alliant Energy, Adam chairs the Equality Alliance, ERG, and ERG for the LGBTQ+ community and its allies. He is also a member of the company's newly created Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Leadership Team, a team dedicated to creating measurable impact on Alliant Energy's workplace and diversity efforts. Next, I'd like to welcome Michaela Frick with American Family Insurance. Michaela is the Inclusive Excellence Consultant for American Family Insurance in Madison. She oversees strategy and operations of the company's 9 business resource groups. Michaela has been with the evolving and growing Inclusive Excellence Division since May of 2018, when she started with the organization as a student intern. In December of 2019, she accepted a full-time role and also completed her Bachelor's of Business Administration and Human Resources from UW-Whitewater, where she served as the class of fall 2019 commencement student speaker. I'd like to welcome Natalie Simmons with Zendesk. Natalie has been a member of the Global Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion team. As part of her role, she has had the opportunity and privilege to build the ERG program from the ground up twice, with ERG 3.0 on the way. Zendesk currently has 8 ERGs with over 40 ERG chapters located around the world. Program managing the global ERGs has given her the opportunity to build relationships across global offices at all levels, learn about the unique cultures, nuances that exist across regions and specific countries, and build relationships with ERG leaders and members who have become the team's biggest champions, creative inspiration, and thought partners. Please help me all welcome Adam, Michaela, and Natalie. Thank you very much for joining us. To get started, I thought that we would just go back to each of the speakers, starting perhaps with Adam, and you could give us perhaps a brief overview of ERGs at your respective companies and how they're working for your particular organization. And with that, I'll turn it over to Adam to get started.
Thank you, Steve. I'm also a member of the BVN Executive Committee, so I just wanted to say thank you to everybody on the Education Engagement Committee who helped put this together today. So thanks for all of your work on it. As Steve mentioned, I am the chair of our Equality Alliance, which is our LGBTQ+ and allies employee resource group. But I'm connected to all of our ERGs and the work that I do through our foundation and community affairs area. So we are often leveraging our ERGs and working with them on sponsorships in our communities or volunteer work and efforts and things that are happening and utilizing their resources and their manpower to help us out with a lot of different initiatives. At Alliant Energy, we have 6 different employee resource groups currently. We have the Equality Alliance, we have a multicultural network, we have our Involving Professionals Network, which started out as our Young Professionals group, but they are evolving, so they've become the Evolving Professionals Network, a Women's Network, a Veterans Network, and then also our Sustainability Squad. Many of these ERGs for us have been around for a long time, and I'll say kind of one of the obstacles or things that we have seen with our ERGs is that they kind of have these life cycles in them, and in terms of kind of somewhat based on the leadership and who's leading them and at what times and what's all happening. So we've seen certain ERG groups get really active and have a lot going on, and then maybe as leadership changes or the people involved in running those ERGs might leave the company or something, sometimes an ERG group will become a little bit less active for a while. That happened with my own ERG group right before I arrived at Alliant. And so it was kind of going through a revitalization once I got there. And it was an exciting time to get involved and help build the group up to what it has become in the past few years. Another kind of obstacle, and I'm sure some of my other counterparts today can kind of speak to this too, I think, is the challenges that you see that you face being spread out geographically. That's something that we certainly have experienced at Alliant Energy. Our employees are spread out all over Wisconsin and Iowa, and I'm sure AmBam and Zendesk can talk about that too, in terms of how they manage their ERGs and employees being based all over the country. But it is one of those challenges to try to keep employees engaged or get employees engaged in all different areas of the company. At Alliant, we have 105 facilities across Wisconsin and Iowa. So how are we getting the message and the resources that are out to all of those people and making sure they're taking advantage of them? With all of our ERGs at Alliant Energy, we have an executive sponsor. Sometimes it's two executive sponsors, somebody at the C-suite level who is participating in the group and helping us move initiatives forward. So we're always really excited about that. And occasionally they move people around, move our executives around and switch them up into different ERGs. It certainly helps us leverage what we can do a little bit more within the company. Also, all of our ERGs are set up to have a small budget themselves so that they can take part in specific events or offer events that they're doing. In the Equality Alliance ERG, we have a budget that we use to help support a lot of the Pride events and things that we participate in, and also to bring in speakers and panelists on different programs, and then also to support our efforts around Pride flags at our facilities during the month of June. So a budget is something that we have with all of our groups. It's also extremely helpful. As I mentioned before, we leverage our ERGs to participate in a lot of volunteer events. And I think it's a great way to be able to show the heart of the company. Here you have employees involved that are passionate about a specific topic, whether it's your veterans group or your Equality Alliance or your multicultural network. And oftentimes those groups come to us with volunteer events or things that they want to participate in. And it's a great way for us to show our support and support the things that they are passionate about out in the community. A couple examples of that, of those types of volunteer opportunities that we've been involved with. One of them is GSAFE, and GSAFE for the past couple of years, they do a run walk in October, which happens to align really well with National Coming Out Day. And so our ERG has worked with them because they get their t-shirts for the run walk, usually like 2 days before the event. And all the t-shirts are delivered and dropped off at our facility, and we set up a t-shirt folding station in our rotunda, and anybody can drop in and help us fold t-shirts, get them all packed up for the run walk, and then GSAFE comes, picks them up, and takes them to their run walk site. So that's just one way we've engaged. Another really popular thing one of our ERGs did a couple years ago was a meat raffle. And those, of course, are something that can be really popular in Wisconsin or we see around. And we did a meat raffle around the holidays for Second Harvest. And so they set up an event where we employees gathered at a bar near our headquarters after work, and were able to purchase raffle tickets, and had a great success with that event. And it was not only an opportunity for employees to do something good and be involved, but it was a great networking opportunity, and for employees to be able to just hang out and chat with each other, but still serve a really strong purpose. And then other things that our ERG is involved with, oftentimes we have a lot of lunch and learn type programs. Our ERGs are charged with bringing, educational value to the to the workplace as a whole. And so that is something that we put a lot of attention on. In my ERG, the Equality Alliance, we recently did a program with a local speaker, Lisa Kennecke, and she offers this program, How to Be an Ally. And the timing of it was pretty perfect for us in mid-June, as there's been a lot of social unrest. And so the timing of it was really great. We had our highest participation that we've ever had at one of our programs. And it was online, to think too. So that was great to see so many people show up and learn about how to be an ally. And it was of course really relevant, because it's not only about how to be an ally to the LGBTQ plus community, but to all groups, all minoritized groups, and how to be supportive of them. So that's kind of our high level overview. Steve, I'll kick it over to the next person.
All right, thank you very much, Adam. I'd love to hear that you have ERGs involved in doing meat raffles, because I never knew what a meat raffle was when I moved to Wisconsin, but I think that's an awesome idea. Okay, let's move on to our next panelist to kind of give us an overview, and that would be Michaela Frick with American Family.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, it was great to hear, Adam. The one thing that my ears perked up at was Lisa Kennecke. She was actually one of my school counselors back when she was in the education system, so I know her really well. So that was super cool to hear. Yeah, but I can hop into a little bit around the business resource groups, American Family. I know that ERG, BRG, those two terms are somewhat interchangeable. But the BRGs really started for American Family way before my time with the company, way before I know that my division existed at the company. I think, like many organizations, they really stemmed from a relatively small group of like grassroots type efforts, a group of really passionate employees who wanted to really bring diversity and inclusion efforts to the forefront, maybe before it was like the trendy corporate thing to do. And so with that, there were small groups to begin with, probably 2 or 3 in the very beginning stages, and today we have 9 total. So up until 2020, we had 5 total, so this year we added 4. Right now we have the Abilities BRG, Multicultural, Veteran Military, Women's, LGBTQA, and then this year we added a Black African American BRG, a South Asian BRG, Southeast East Asian BRG, and Hispanic Latinx BRG. So these groups were added really as a part of, an impact of listening to our employees. How can we make this employee experience better for you? How can we personalize the experience, especially around diversity, equity, and inclusion work? So that recent evolution has really stemmed from uplifting those employee voices, which are a great avenue through the BRGs anyway. But a little bit more around the backstory with them at American Family. So when they started those grassroots efforts, they had sponsors at the time. That was sort of how they were structured and managed, and they had their own like internal structure. And in 2018, when American Family officially added the Diversity and Inclusion Department, is when that partnership between corporate diversity and inclusion and our business resource groups really strengthened and took off. So since 2018, we've really been working to build that partnership. And with that has come a more structured structure, so to speak. So each BRG has its own lead, co-lead, and then they each have a core team to support the different aspects of the group. So events, membership recruitment, and admin operations, and then communications as well. So thinking of it like a typical committee structure you might see in a group like this network, that is really how they're supported. And then of course they have their vast membership to support their programming and their events and their volunteer efforts and things like that. And outside of that structure, they also have lots of support from their executive co-sponsors. So each group has 2 executive sponsors, which really They help to like guide the strategy, provide feedback, help uncover opportunities for the groups to connect with other areas of the business, impact ongoing initiatives company-wide. So that has been a really big tool for the leads and the co-leads to leverage, not only to strengthen their strategies, but for their personal development. These roles have been really framed up in a way for employees to aspire to lead a group that not only they're passionate about, but one that they can build leadership skills out of. So that's been a really great thing to watch take place. And then they are also funded financially by our division, so the Inclusive Excellence Division. So we do provide that monetary support to the groups, but we're also partnering with them more in a strategic advisor capacity. So even though we set up the policies and the processes and all of those standard things, we really are like a sounding board, a thought partner to really aspire toward that collaborative relationship and keep each other informed of things that are happening sort of on both sides of the house. So that has been a really big thing that we've been building up these past couple of years, and it's really been great to see that expand. And so in addition to the 9 groups that are mainly stationed here in Madison, American Family operates across different regions throughout the country. So we have 5 of our largest regional areas: Phoenix, Denver, Eden Prairie, Minnesota, St. Louis, St. Joseph. Was that 5? I think that was all 5. So we have those 5 areas, and they have their own chapter, so to speak, is probably the best way to sum it up, but they have groups in those locations as well. So I think Adam was getting a little bit to this too. Really, it's been a struggle in past years to think through how it's not one size fits all. The groups here in Madison don't have the same interests or desires, or maybe even, you know, understanding of community organizations that we do as they do in their own areas. And not only that, but the cultures within the different offices, even within one company, are also different. So those needs have looked really different across the country. And it's been a really great, almost a blessing in disguise with the new virtual reality of our working world. It's been much easier, and it sort of forced us to collaborate a little bit more and really just get all of each other's thoughts in one spot. So Zoom has been a great tool for us these last couple of months especially. And a little bit around some of the events we do. So our groups have 4 focus areas that all of their programming, their events, their activities are based off of. So one of them is business results. So we do really pride our BRG's ability to drive results across the business. So whether that's enhancing retention for our employees, or even improving customer satisfaction, groups are able to serve those different areas by hosting focus groups. So, you know, let's say we're trying to capture new markets as a company. We have those markets within our employee base, within our company. So the idea is that the BRGs are the perfect forum to sort of be that funnel toward those end results. We also focus on like talent and the workplace overall. So making the workplace inclusive, building the culture, and those things really stem from lots of the more big ticket events that they host, whether those are annual or sort of monthly or whatever cadence that might be. But lots of the times those revolve around lots of like cultural heritage months. So Pride Month, Black History Month, Hispanic Heritage Month coming up here. So they have lots of program that we partner with as a division on with them that really helps to build the culture and nurture the inclusiveness that employees feel, and eventually encourages them to be more engaged and feel more welcome as employees. So we have also plenty of volunteer and community facing efforts. We partner a lot with those types of efforts with areas in the company like community investments and our Institute for Corporate and Social Impact. So that is really the gist of where those come from. They've held clothing drives for women. They've done school drives, and they've mentored for different local schools. We have an Adopt a School program. So there are lots of things that they're involved in, day out. It's been super interesting to see that evolve with this new virtual nature of the world. But yeah, the past just couple of months in this role formally have been super great, and I think there's still lots for us to learn and lots for us to sort of stumble through together, but it's been really great to engage even in opportunities like this to see what other companies are doing, because I think that's really at the core of all of this work, is that there is a shared goal in this work. There's a shared and common understanding of what we're working toward. So that is really like the high level of sort of what's happening with the BRGs, where they're going, where they've been. I can pass it off to the next panelist, Natalie, with that.
Wonderful, thanks, Michaela. And I've worked closely with Jahan at American Family, and it's been really neat to see just the work that you're doing. Well, great. So, hi, my name is Natalie Simmons, and I'm on the Global Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion team here at Zendesk. We launched employee resource groups about 2.5 years ago formally. It feels like it's been much longer than that. But prior to launching kind of our ERGs, kind of similarly to what Michaela mentioned, we had a few kind of grassroots groups, committees, kind of working behind the scenes. And particularly in San Francisco, a group of our LGBTQIA employees who really helped drive participation at our local Pride events kind of said, why don't we continue meeting, outside of June and around the year? And so, meetings kind of continued on a monthly or quarterly basis. And essentially, it was raised that we really needed to create a formalized ERG program. There was a huge desire for community. People were looking for support and a sense of belonging. And when we recently, when we hired around that same time, our senior manager of global DEI, that was kind of the perfect opportunity to bring ERGs to life. So some of the initial obstacles that we faced when getting ERGs off the ground, I would say one was education and visibility. And trying to bring awareness to what are employee resource groups, what do they do, kind of what's their mission, how do they operate, are they clubs, are they communities? And some of the ways that we really started just socializing the idea of ERGs was through new hire orientation. So making sure that all of our employees, when they joined the company, were hearing about ERGs, how to get involved, what they're all about. Working with our leadership just to make sure that our leaders are aware of what ERGs do so they can promote, their employees' participation versus pushing back on, why are you going to this meeting? Our ERGs, we really tried to spotlight at town halls, which are our monthly company-wide events. So spotlighting their efforts, initiatives, really just kind of showing our support for the work that was doing, and then also using our communications channels. So we have a newsletter as well as now we have Slack, so utilizing Slack channels. Lack of funding, I would say, was another kind of issue right off the bat. I feel like on my resume, I could have like professional fundraiser because when we first started, we really didn't have a budget. And so as we were going through calendar planning, we would be going to different parts of the business saying, hey, we're looking to drive this initiative. Do you have a couple $1,000s here or a couple $1,000s there? And at that point, just budgets were very, very tight. And so we were truly counting kind of pennies. And so that was something that we kind of needed to figure out. How do we fund and sustain our ERGs? And then also program development and management. And so when I joined the GDEI team just about 2 years ago, ERGs had been in existence for about 6 months. And we had 3 ERGs and 6 chapters. So 3 in Madison, 3 in San Francisco. And each ERG was really kind of excited and off to the races in terms of building out charters, building out processes, building out programs. And it was a little bit kind of herding cats in terms of trying to create one universal operating model and structure. And so when I joined the team, part of my role was kind of designing that one cohesive structure that would bring everyone together and in alignment, and also in alignment with our business. And so we now have 8 ERGs, 40 chapters across all regions of the globe, and about 25% of our workforce participates in ERGs, which is pretty fantastic. We have 2 ERG leaders for each chapter, 1 executive sponsor for each ERG. But one thing we have been rolling out too is just having kind of more local regional leadership. So as Michaela mentioned, just there are definitely, I'd say, GDEI in terms of just being part of a conversation. We're really trying to meet our employees where they are. And, you know, I think that we definitely have some, you know, there's regional nuances, there's, you know, local nuances that we really want to take into consideration. But also, you know, in San Francisco, many of our employees came from companies where they were participated in employee resource groups. So it's just a more kind of normal concept. And so it's been really successful for us having regional leadership, especially in like LATAM, our Brazil office, our Mexico City office, kind of looking in Europe, in Asia, just to be able to provide just a little bit more structure and support that is local, is something that we've been doing. And in terms of just how we support our ERGs, so over the past 2 years, I've been the global program manager for our ERGs, kind of acting as a lobbyist and liaison between our ERGs and the rest of the business, from management support, budget and resources support, and part of, as Steve mentioned, we're going through ERG 3.0 is because we're building out kind of a regional council model to try to decentralize operational support and kind of have a local approach versus a global approach to make sure we really are meeting our employees' needs at a regional level. So how we overcame some of these challenges would be creating a global structure, executive sponsorship. So leadership engagement has been huge in being able to drive initiatives from the top down and the ground up. Awareness, so as I mentioned, leveraging communication channels, engaging allies, creating opportunities to get involved, formalizing processes and trainings. Some techniques for engagement, I would say kind of the single-handed kind of most successful thing that we've done is really launching, kind of broadening our ERGs and encouraging intersectionality. So the ERGs that we currently have are Women at Zendesk, Women in Engineering, Pride, which is our LGBTQIA ERG, Mosaic, which is our Employees of Color ERG. We have the Global Veterans Network, the Village, which is our Parents and Caregivers ERG. And then we have the Bridge, which is our multi-generational ERG, in particular supporting employees over 40. And Whole Self, which is our mental, physical, disability and wellness ERG. And when I would say the Village, kind of bringing in parents and caregivers, was 35% of our employees at Zendesk are parents or caregivers. And so bringing in 35% of your employees into the conversation and then being able to talk about the intersection of our identities has led to just awareness and empathy and kind of collaboration across ERGs. And Michaela mentioned just now that we're in this virtual world, how it's even easier to do so. And so an example of kind of an intersectional event would be our Village ERG brought in a speaker from Madison last week about how to raise anti-racist children and how to talk to your children about racism. So kind of, we try to use intersectionality as a way for just to bring kind of different people into the conversation and kind of learn about the experiences across our employees where they may not have joined a specific ERG. So that's been pretty great. In terms of the other piece is connecting ERGs to business goals. So making sure that ERG efforts don't exist in an echo chamber. And so getting people to care in different ways and for the business to be receptive. And so our 3 North Stars are workforce, workplace, customer and product, and then corporate social justice. For workforce, workplace, that's looking at just the entire employee life cycle. And our ERGs have been able to influence everything from benefits to professional development to career progression opportunities, workplace, thinking about, you know, our office is inclusive, thinking about this virtual world that we're living in. Are we designing an inclusive workplace? Workforce, you know, who we hire, how we're retaining employees. For customer product, are we, you know, how can we make sure that we are being inclusive of our customers? How are we making sure that our products are accessible? Just even kind of moving to leader-led and giving our business leaders opportunities to weigh in and drive impact through their orgs has created beautiful partnerships with our ERGs. And then from a corporate social justice lens, identifying inequities and then providing education and volunteer opportunities to make sure that our employees you know, are aware of what's going on, both I would say globally, but also in their local communities. Like that is kind of is the overview.
Very good. Thank you very much, Natalie and Michaela and Adam, for giving us that very, very inclusive and overall overview of each of the opportunities for ERGs in your organizations. I just want to remind the attendees today that if you have a question for any of the panelists that hasn't been covered so far that you would like to see covered, be sure to click on chat in Zoom. You can see it's highlighted there, circled in red, and go ahead and submit your question. And in a few moments, we're going to be you know, addressing any of those questions that might come through. So don't hesitate to put your question out there, and we'll try to get to all the questions that come in. So just go ahead and do that. I'm gonna have a few follow-up questions for each of the panelists. I know, Adam, when you were mentioning about having C-level sponsor, I was thinking about that, even kind of my past experience and how that has worked. And I was wondering if the sponsors that you get are people who have volunteered for specific, to participate with specific ERGs, or how that connection actually gets made. Because sometimes the talk is great, but then the actual participation and guidance is more of a real pull to try to get them involved. How does that work for Alliant?
I would say, it's hard to say exactly. I think when it first kind of started out, I think executives kind of, you know, maybe volunteered for a specific ERG and got involved in a specific location, maybe that they were most interested in or aligned with them best. And I think over time, though, they've kind of moved them around a little bit and provided, you know, and tried to shake things up a little bit. And I think it's based on two things. I think one of the things that has been helpful is that in the past, so our ERGs belong to our HR group overall, but, you know, HR might be looking at it and saying, oh, this executive was really successful at helping, you know, get this ERG to grow and, you know, over this hump, you know, and growing in a certain direction. And I think they could kind of help replicate that over here in this ERG and help a group, you know, grow in a certain direction. So I think that is some of it. But I think some of it still comes back to that kind of personal passions as well of our executives. And also some of our directors too serve as the executive sponsor of some of our groups.
Great, great, awesome. Thank you very much. Michaela, I was listening to your overview, and I think that you mentioned about the reasoning behind the BRG versus ERG is the tie-in to business results. And I think you gave an example of like a focus group giving input into new markets or making sure that policies are inclusive. And then I was also trying to think about like how those things get tied back, like to the, is there a metric that get tied back to that kind of closes that loop if this came out of this group and this is the result, and how does that tie together?
Yeah, I'd say it's it's sort of a mix, and I hate this answer, but it depends kind of thing. Like it depends on the effort that the groups are involved in. So for something like utilizing the example of utilizing a business resource group as a focus group to determine trends within that that cohort, whether it's a demographic or a generation or what have you, you know, that is something that, in my mind, I would directly tie it to lots of companies when they're doing their marketing research. They'll pull in a third party, a vendor, they'll buy data, and that's obviously a huge expense to the company. Some of those, you know, those analyses and studies are very expensive on the company's sort of expense sheet there. So a way to think about that is like you have that data living within your organization. The turnover, or not the turnover, the return in my mind is pretty clear there. And to sort of get back to like, is there a metric? Is there a way that it's directly measured? There's been a little bit of push and pull I've seen in the D&I world. It's been, do we have to measure that? Do we have to tie it to a dollar amount? Does it have to be in the number on the other end? Because we know it's the right thing to do. We know that this has shown up again and again in studies that like this is how you engage your employees, this is how you retain them. So on the inclusive excellence side, our team is really working to build processes and tools to more precisely measure these things. But in recent years, the way that we've been able to demonstrate it, whether that's numerically or not, is that the BRGs have created annual reports of all the things that they've done. So let's say they did a volunteering event and they had like 75% of their membership show up, or they had a professional development event, and as a result of it, 2 weeks later, they gained 50 new members to that group. So those are the types of things that we will report on. And not only do they share those back with our division as their partners, they also share them with their executive sponsors. And that sort of rolls into their goals and their metrics and their measures of success for the year to come. So that's sort of an example of the way that we've compiled all the different measures that could be considered and provided it in one sort of puzzle piece of all the different things that they have going on.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you very much for expanding on that. I appreciate that. And Natalie, one of the things I was thinking about when you were speaking is, number one, I was so impressed that there are ERG platforms, you know, focus on different areas, not just of the country, but of the world, and how different those must be, because we find differences so much, even just between urban, rural, and, you know, different regions of the country, differences. And so one of the things I was thinking about, like, well, what is the initiative, or what initiatives are there for you and for Zendesk, for ERGs going into the coming year? Or would you be willing to share those? I think you need to unmute. There you go.
Definitely. You know, and I think we're just 2020 has been such a year of change and of growth that I think we're still kind of in process in terms of looking at kind of finalizing our calendar planning. But I would say the three biggest areas that we're really looking at are aligning our ERG and regional council efforts to our 3 North Stars. So looking at workforce, workplace, looking at our product and customers, and then also looking at corporate social justice. And I think what's really neat is that those things kind of mean different things, like across each region. And so we've started having discovery calls kind of with our different regions, and you know, thinking about areas where we can improve benefits in Southeast Asia. Just even in terms of professional development, there are certain regions that are kind of asking to be up-leveled in kind of different skills. Thinking about corporate social justice, one thing that we did this year, kind of over the past few months, is we actually hosted empathy circles, where we brought together, so 5 sessions, 800 employees total, just to talk about kind of personal experiences and raise ideas to business leaders. So our C staff and E staff were present in these conversations for how Zendesk can be a more inclusive and equitable place. And through these conversations kind of created these different work streams in terms of just rolling out a global equity policy, you know, different trainings that we desperately need, kind of looking at just really, I think we're laying a lot of amazing foundation, and I would say making sure that there's a global, just our global employee base is represented in every single thing that we're doing. And so I think one thing that we're going to be moving away from this year, in the past, a lot of our ERG efforts were based around days of recognition. And I think right now we're really looking at like what are the things that our ERGs need and the business need to move forward. And so trying to be a little bit more strategic there. And so I'm excited just to see, I think the last quarter has brought a lot of clarity in terms of what's important. Zendesk has kind of doubled down their investment in GDEI. And so the year ahead is looking exciting.
Great, great. Thank you so much, Natalie. I'm going to take a little bit of a break from me moderating the questions here and turn this over to Jim Jensen, who has been kind of monitoring our questions that came in through chat. And Jim, do you have some questions you'd like to bring out from the chat team, our chat responses?
Yes, we have 3 questions that came in. One is kind of for everybody here. Anna Larson from TDS Telecom asked if we could provide panelists contact information for follow-up after the webinar today. I think that would be a great thing to have. Perhaps the United Way staff, BVN, can provide that as a follow-up to our participants so that we can have, or that they can have contact and follow-up for that. Jackie Rogenbogen, I'm not sure where Jackie's from, but she has a question from Michaela. How does the multicultural BRG function differently now that there are 4 new BRGs based on distinct racial and ethnic identities? So I think perhaps you had mentioned some of the distinct multicultural or ethnic identities or BRGs that were developed, Michaela. So perhaps you could respond to that.
Yeah, of course. That's a really good question. It has a little bit actually to do with a comment that Natalie actually just shared, like moving away from days of recognition, cultural heritage months, and really working to build that strategic approach. So what we saw happening on top of the employee feedback that we were gathering was that our multicultural BRG, while they were doing plenty of things, business impact tied outside of things like cultural heritage months and days of recognition, it was still important to them to uplift those days, like no matter how big or small of an event they were putting on. But due to the frequency of them, if you think about Black History Month, AAPI, Asian American Pacific Islander Month, Hispanic Heritage Month, Native American Indigenous November, all of those things really started to weigh heavily on their resources and their funding. So in the start of 2020, we made the decision to partner with the BRGs on those events. So not only do they have more resources around them, but they have some capacity freed up to start celebrating those cultures and those identities every single day of the year without having to do it in a way that felt structured and maybe less strategic than it would if you could just have those conversations on any given month or day or what have you. So the way that they function differently now is not only do each of those cultural heritage months that we recognize have one BRG supporting them instead of our multicultural BRG supporting 4, 5, 6. The MBRG not only has more opportunity to start to talk about things like intersectionality and to recognize that these BRGs really can be cross-collaborating. There are women in all of the BRGs. There are people of color across all of the BRGs. So it's really freed up time for them to collaborate, brainstorm, talk more about their strategic partnerships. And then we also get to think about the evolution of our like diversity and inclusion learning journey. So not only are we talking about, yes, we have these diverse identities within our organization. We know it's important to include everyone, and you know, we've built that business case up. But now we've started to talk about things like allyship and intersectionality, and we can bring up topics about what it means to be biracial, for example, and we really get to dive into those identities rather than maybe lumping them into one group, which is something that people of color struggle with a lot. Is we're not a monolithic group. There are different identities within the group. There's more diversity within the group than many would assume. So it's really given them the chance to dive beyond the surface level, to have more impactful conversations, and really to bring more people into the conversation, and to focus on building up that allyship and those pieces of cultural intelligence across the organization. So added more resources, more opportunities, and really sort of forced us to begin thinking further down the road.
Thank you. Okay, we have about 5 minutes left. We do have one other question from Adriana Hernandez. This is for international companies. So for companies that have employees in offices in different countries, Adriana asks, how did the conversations for building an ERG in different countries and locations go? So if you want to respond to that, Michaela, and then we'll pass it on to
or maybe Natalie could respond.
Oh, yep. So when, yeah, no, it's interesting because I think they're just socializing kind of the concept for ERGs, but I would say that our employee resource groups have been really our employees have been really excited to bring employee resource groups kind of to different offices. And I think something I kind of mentioned earlier, when we built our framework, I think you need to build a framework that's flexible and really listen to employees around, you know, what is their experience, and, you know, where can we offer support. And I think, Michaela, when you were talking about, you know, thinking about employees of color, you know, not being one monolithic group, I think what also is really important to think about is, you know, race and ethnicity, and is viewed so differently around the world. And I think that's where Mosaic, which is our employee resource group for employees of color, has been really, it's been amazing, I think, for us being able to represent different backgrounds of our employees, like within this group. One, to be able to learn from each other and learn about, you know, our experiences, our identities, and just kind of the knowledge sharing, but also it's really helped us be able to kind of organically design employee resource groups that meet the needs and are relevant globally. And, you know, and I would say kind of the other piece too is there are some areas where we've decided to launch ERGs regionally versus office specific. So for example, in Singapore, where it's illegal to be LGBTQIA, like what we'll do is we'll launch a Asia Pacific employee resource group, make sure that our employees in Singapore have access to the group and to the community, but at the same time, you know, not launch a Singapore specific group where there just could be, where employees have expressed discomfort kind of establishing a local group. And so I think that's where, you know, even thinking about, we kind of had a similar approach to launching our Pride group in EMEA, where in Krakow, Poland, it's a very different experience being a part of the LGBTQIA community versus in Dublin or London or France or Copenhagen. And so I think just really talking to your employees, getting to know them, getting to know their experiences, and then working with them to build communities that are really going to support your employees versus, you know, trying to give them a model that won't necessarily work. And I think when there's that thoughtfulness and care, the conversation goes kind of beautifully. If not, probably not so well.
Michaela, did you want to respond real quickly?
Yeah, so we don't have different countries that we operate in, but in the local regional areas, I know I mentioned that was a little bit of a struggle too, since the cultures are all so different. But the way that that sort of transpired is that the regions have BRG representation because we have some leaders across the organization. Our CEO in particular is super. He's a great ally. He's a great champion. He does the work every day, Jack. He doesn't just talk the talk. He definitely walks the walk. So he's really been great in getting other leaders on that same boat, and leaders who lead in those areas, in those different regions. They've really been the great voice pieces to make sure that their employees have those regional outlets and those forums and those communities. So they've been really great in supporting employees in different offices. And of course, it's been from the bottom up to employees in those offices have been super instrumental in keeping the momentum going, since they don't always have the same resources or the connections or the infrastructure that we do at our corporate office. So definitely a dual effort there, and lots of great minds coming together to make sure that that works for us and that they have what they need.
Thank you. We're at 2 o'clock.
Yep, I think that we could bring back up the presentation, Georgia. Thank you very much. And there are some upcoming events and resources. Jill or Stephanie, did you want to cover these, or do you want me to just go through them real quickly?
Yes, I think just to be quick, that was amazing. Time flies when you're having a great conversation. Thanks everybody for sharing. Please note that there is another webinar coming up on August 18th, and there will be virtual and remote, distanced volunteer opportunities between August 19th and the 29th. And we will be having our next BVN webinar on October 13th, if you want to mark your calendars. And please be sure to check out the United Way of Dane County's website, UWDC 2020, for all of the COVID relief programs and other webinars and content coming your way. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us. And again, please reach out if you have any feedback or if you'd like to get more involved. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, panelists.